The first thing I noticed when Mara walked through our front door at 11:17 p.m. wasn't her flushed cheeks or the way she avoided eye contact. It was the cologne. Tom Ford Oud Wood, woody, smoky, expensive as hell, and definitely not mine. I'm Elias Corven, forensic accountant for the Treasury Department, which means I notice details other people miss. Like how my wife of 14 years suddenly smelled like another man's signature scent clinging to her silk blouse like a confession. Sorry I'm late, Mara said, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter with practiced casualness. Drew gave me a ride home after the client dinner. Traffic was horrible. Drew Halden, her boss at Meridian Financial. 45, divorced last year, drives a black Mercedes S-Class that probably cost more than our house. I'd met him twice at company parties, the kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits and looked at other men's wives like items on a menu. That was kind of him, I replied, watching her pour wine with trembling hands. Mara laughed, but it came out forced. Don't be paranoid, Eli. It was just a ride. Paranoid. Interesting choice of words for an innocent explanation. I'd been married long enough to recognize the signs. The way she turned away when she spoke. How she'd started working late 3 nights a week. The new lingerie I'd found in her drawer. Tags still on, never worn for me. The phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. But tonight was different. Tonight I had proof sitting in my driveway. 6 months ago, I'd installed a dashcam system after our neighbor's car got vandalized, front and rear cameras with motion sensors, automatically uploading to cloud storage. Insurance purposes, I'd told Mara. She'd barely paid attention. Now I was grateful for my paranoia. While Mara showered upstairs, I pulled up the footage on my laptop. There it was, a black Mercedes S-Class parked in our driveway from 9:31 to 10:18 p.m. 47 minutes. The windows had fogged over within the first 10 minutes, and when Mara finally emerged, her hair was mussed and her blouse was buttoned wrong. I watched her adjust her clothing, check her reflection in the car's side mirror, and smooth down her skirt before walking to our front door. Drew's window rolled down just long enough for him to hand her something, looked like her earrings. My wife of 14 years, mother of my 12-year-old daughter Jamie, the woman who still kissed me goodbye every morning and asked about my day when I came home. Except she'd been coming home late, smelling like Tom Ford Oud Wood, with her boss's hands all over her. I saved the footage to 3 different drives and uploaded copies to a secure server. Then I did what any good forensic accountant would do. I started building a case. Drew Halden wasn't just Mara's boss. His company, Halden Industries, was one of the firms I'd been quietly investigating for the Treasury. Nothing major, just routine compliance checks on their government contracts. But now I had a personal interest in digging deeper. I spent the next 2 hours going through financial records I had legitimate access to. Halden Industries was family-owned, with Drew's ex-wife Vera controlling 51% through her inheritance. She'd kept her shares in the divorce, which meant Drew was essentially working for his ex-wife while screwing my wife. The irony was delicious. By 2 a.m., I'd found the first discrepancy. A series of transfers from Halden's government contract account, small amounts, but frequent. The digital signatures traced back to Mara's department. Either she was incredibly careless with her login credentials, or she was actively involved in moving money that shouldn't be moved. My wife wasn't just having an affair, she was potentially committing fraud with her lover. I closed the laptop and went upstairs. Mara was asleep, or pretending to be. Her phone was charging on the nightstand, face down as always now. The Tom Ford scent still lingered on her pillow. Tomorrow was Saturday. Jamie had a soccer game at 10, then a sleepover at her friend's house. That would give me time to do more digging. But first, I had a message to send. I found Vera Halden's contact information through the company directory. As the majority shareholder, she received copies of all compliance reports, including the ones I'd been filing on her ex-husband's company. I composed a simple email, attaching the dashcam footage and a screenshot of the financial irregularities I'd found. Mrs. Halden, I thought you might be interested in seeing how your ex-husband is conducting business these days. The board meeting next Monday should be very interesting. A concerned citizen. I hit send at 2:47 a.m. Then I went to bed next to my cheating wife and slept better than I had in months. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made everything feel sharp and clear. Jamie bounced around the kitchen in her soccer uniform, chattering about the game while Mara nursed coffee and avoided my eyes. "Dad, are you coming to watch?" Jamie asked, grabbing her gear bag. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, ruffling her dark hair. She had my analytical mind and Mara's stubborn streak, a dangerous combination that would serve her well in life. Mara glanced up from her phone. "I might be a little late. Drew called an emergency strategy session for the Morrison account." Saturday morning strategy sessions. Right. No problem, I said. Jamie and I will handle it. After they left, separately, which had become the new normal, I got to work. The beauty of being a forensic accountant is that I have access to databases and cross-referencing tools that would make a private investigator weep with envy. I started with Drew Halden's financial history, then expanded to include Mara's employment records and banking patterns. What I found made my stomach turn. The irregularities went back 8 months, small transfers at first, then larger ones, always from government contract accounts, always routed through shell companies, always with Mara's digital signature authorizing the moves. The total was approaching $2.3 million. But here's what made it interesting. The money wasn't disappearing. It was being moved, laundered through a series of accounts, then invested in high-yield bonds and cryptocurrency. Someone was running a sophisticated embezzlement scheme, using the government funds as their personal investment capital, then returning the principal while keeping the profits. It was actually brilliant in a completely illegal way. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Corven? This is Vera Halden. I believe you sent me some very interesting information last night. Her voice was cultured, controlled, with just a hint of steel underneath. I'd expected anger or shock. Instead, she sounded almost amused. Mrs. Halden, I thought you should know what your ex-husband was up to. Oh, I've known about Drew's extracurricular activities for quite some time. What interests me is that your wife appears to be his business partner as well as his other kind of partner. She'd done her homework fast. I respected that. Would you be interested in meeting? She continued. I think we might be able to help each other. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown in 2 hours. That gave me time to watch Jamie's game and get her settled at her sleepover. Jamie scored 2 goals and assisted on a third. Watching her celebrate with her teammates, I felt a stab of protective fury. Mara's choices weren't just destroying our marriage, they were going to tear apart our daughter's world. After dropping Jamie at her friend's house, I drove to meet Vera Halden. She was already seated at a corner table when I arrived, a striking woman in her early 40s with silver-streaked auburn hair and the kind of understated elegance that comes from old money. She wore a simple black dress that probably cost more than my car, and her handshake was firm and direct. Mr. Corven, thank you for coming. I sat across from her. I'm not sure what you're expecting from this meeting. Honesty, she said, and possibly revenge. She opened a leather portfolio and slid a photograph across the table. It showed Drew and Mara in what appeared to be a hotel lobby, his hand on her lower back, both of them laughing. The Halcyon Hotel, she said. Room 714. They've been meeting there twice a week for the past 6 months. I've had them followed since March. You knew about the affair and didn't tell me? I didn't know you existed until last night. Drew has a pattern. He targets married women in his company, usually ones with access to sensitive financial information. Your wife is the third in 2 years? She showed me more photographs. Drew with different women, always in compromising positions, always looking like he owned them. The other 2 were bought off, Vera continued. Generous severance packages, glowing recommendations, non-disclosure agreements. But your wife is different. She's not just sleeping with him, she's helping him steal. I leaned back in my chair. What do you want from me? Evidence. Proof of the embezzlement that will hold up in court. I want Drew destroyed, and I want control of my company back. And what do I get? Her smile was sharp as a blade. Your wife goes down with him. We talked for another hour, sharing information and planning our next moves. Vera had resources. Private investigators, legal connections, political influence. I had access to the financial records and the technical expertise to trace the money trail. By the time we parted ways, we had a plan. Step 1. Get into Mara's personal computer and find the encrypted files that would prove her involvement. Step 2. Document everything with evidence that would hold up in federal court. Step 3. Present it all to the board of directors at Monday's meeting. Step 4. Watch them burn. I drove home feeling more focused than I had in months. Mara's car wasn't in the driveway. Still at her strategy session, apparently, I had the house to myself and work to do. Sunday afternoon, Mara announced she was going to her friend Lena's house to help plan a baby shower. Another lie, delivered with the same casual confidence she'd been using for months. Take your time, I said, not looking up from my newspaper. I'll be here when you get back. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already confirmed Lena was in Chicago visiting her sister. Social media is a beautiful thing when you're tracking a cheater's alibis. 30 minutes after Mara left, I was picking the lock on her home office. She'd started locking it 3 weeks ago, claiming she needed privacy for sensitive client work. The lock was a basic residential deadbolt, Child's play for someone who'd spent 2 years investigating white-collar crime in Detroit. Her laptop was password protected, but I'd been watching her type it for months without realizing it. Jamie 2011, our daughter's name and birth year. The password to her heart, used to hide her betrayal. The desktop looked normal enough. Spreadsheets, presentations, family photos, but I knew how to look deeper. Hidden in a folder labeled Tax Documents 2019 were the files I needed. Encrypted, but not well enough to stop someone with Treasury Department software. It took 40 minutes to crack, but once I was in, I had everything. Bank account numbers, transfer authorizations, meeting notes with Drew discussing investment strategies and profit sharing. Email chains showing exactly how they'd been moving the money and splitting the returns. Mara wasn't just complicit, she was the architect. The embezzlement scheme had been her idea. Drew provided the authority and access, but Mara had designed the system, created the shell companies, and managed the investments. She'd been playing the role of dutiful wife while stealing millions and planning a future with another man. I copied everything to encrypted drives, then carefully put the laptop back exactly as I'd found it. That's when I heard the front door open. "Eli, I'm home." She was 3 hours early. I locked her office door and made it to the living room just as she walked in, carrying takeout bags and wearing a guilty smile. Lena's sister came down with the flu, so we postponed the planning session. I brought Chinese food. More lies. I wondered if she even remembered what the truth looked like anymore. We ate dinner, making small talk about Jamie's soccer game and my work. Mara seemed nervous, checking her phone constantly and jumping at every sound. I played the oblivious husband, asking about her day and commenting on the weather. After dinner, she retreated to the bathroom for a long shower. I used the time to upload everything to secure servers and send a detailed report to Vera. When Mara came downstairs in her robe, hair still damp, she looked younger somehow, vulnerable. For a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her 15 years ago. "Eli," she said, settling next to me on the couch. "We need to talk." My heart rate spiked. Had she discovered the break-in? Found some trace of my investigation? About what? About us. About our marriage. She took my hand, her skin soft and warm. "I know things have been distant lately. I want to fix that." She leaned closer, and I caught a faint trace of Tom Ford Outwood in her hair. Even after betraying me with another man, she couldn't wash away his scent completely. "I love you," she whispered, kissing my neck. "I know I haven't been showing it, but I do. You and Jamie are everything to me." The performance was flawless. If I hadn't seen the evidence, hadn't watched the dashcam footage, hadn't cracked her encrypted files, I might have believed her. Instead, I pulled away gently. "I'm tired," I said. "Long day. Maybe we can talk more tomorrow." The hurt in her eyes looked genuine. Maybe it was. Maybe some part of her really did love me, even while she was stealing millions and planning to leave me for Drew. "Of course," she said. "I understand." I went to bed alone while she stayed downstairs, probably texting her lover and planning their next move. Tomorrow was Monday, board meeting day. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. and tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing through possibilities. What would happen when Vera presented the evidence? Would Mara try to run? Would she attempt to destroy the remaining evidence? Would she finally tell me the truth? At 2:17 a.m., I heard her come upstairs. She slipped into bed beside me, careful not to wake me up. In the darkness, I felt her watching me, maybe wondering if I suspected anything, if only she knew. I lay there listening to her breathe, planning the final moves in a game she didn't even know we were playing. By tomorrow night, her world would be completely destroyed, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. Mara was already gone when I woke up. An early meeting, according to the note she'd left on the kitchen counter. More likely, she was having breakfast with Drew, planning their strategy for what they thought would be just another routine board meeting. I took my time getting ready, choosing my best suit and the tie Mara had bought me for our anniversary last year. If I was going to watch my marriage explode, I wanted to look professional doing it. Vera had texted me at 6 a.m. "Everything is in place. Board meeting moved to 10 a.m. in the main conference room. You're listed as a Treasury Department observer." Perfect. I'd have a front row seat for the destruction. I arrived at Halden Industries at 9:45, checking in with security and making my way to the 32nd floor. The conference room was already buzzing with activity, board members, lawyers, and executives settling in for what they thought would be a routine quarterly review. Drew sat at the head of the table, looking confident in his expensive suit and gold watch. He nodded to me politely when I entered, probably wondering why Treasury had sent an observer to such a mundane meeting. Mara sat 3 seats down from him, focused on her laptop and looking every inch the competent financial professional. She glanced up when I walked in, surprise flickering across her face. "Eli, what are you doing here?" "Routine compliance observation," I said, taking a seat along the wall. "Don't mind me." Vera entered at exactly 10 a.m., commanding the room's attention without saying a word. She'd traded her casual elegance for a sharp business suit that screamed power and authority. The other board members straightened in their chairs. Old money still carried weight in these circles. "Good morning, everyone," she said, settling into her chair at the opposite end of the table from Drew. "I know this meeting was called on short notice, but we have some urgent matters to address." Drew leaned forward. "Vera, if this is about the Morrison contract, I can assure you, it's not about Morrison." She opened her leather portfolio and began distributing folders to each board member. "It's about theft." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I watched Mara's face go pale as she opened her folder and saw the dashcam screenshot staring back at her. "What is this?" Drew demanded, his confidence cracking. "Evidence," Vera said calmly. "Evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Evidence that you and Mrs. Allen have been stealing from government contracts and using company resources for your personal enrichment," she gestured to me. "Mr. Corven from the Treasury Department has been investigating irregularities in our federal contracts. What he found was quite illuminating." I stood up, my heart hammering but my voice steady. "Over the past 8 months, approximately $2.3 million has been diverted from government contract accounts through a series of unauthorized transfers. The digital trail leads directly to Ms. Solin's login credentials and Mr. Halden's authorization codes." Mara shot to her feet. "That's impossible. You never what?" I pulled out my phone and played an audio recording, her voice from the encrypted files, discussing profit margins and investment returns with Drew. "Never conspired to defraud the federal government? Never used your position to facilitate theft?" The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Board members flipped through the air folders, examining bank records, transfer authorizations, and time-stamped security footage. Drew tried to regain control. "This is clearly a setup. Vera, you're obviously trying to what? Protect the company you've been robbing?" Vera's voice cut through his protests like a scalpel. "We have 8 months of documented evidence. We have recordings of your planning sessions. We have hotel receipts and financial records showing exactly how you've been splitting the stolen money." She stood up, addressing the entire board. "I'm calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in Drew Halden's leadership, followed by his termination for cause. All in favor?" 8 hands went up immediately. Only Drew's remained down. Motion carried. Vera's smile was arctic. "Security will escort you from the building. Your access codes are already deactivated." Drew's face went through a spectrum of emotions: shock, anger, desperation, and finally a kind of defeated rage. He looked at Mara, who was still standing frozen by her chair. "This is your fault," he snarled at her. "You said your husband was too stupid to figure it out." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not just the insult, but the casual way he said it, like they'd discussed my intelligence, my marriage, my life as just another obstacle to their plans. Mara finally found her voice. "Drew, don't what? Tell them how you seduced me into this scheme. How you promised me we'd be together once you divorced the boring accountant." Security arrived then. 2 large men in dark suits who looked like they'd handled this kind of situation before. They flanked Drew, waiting for Vera's signal. "Miss Solin," Vera said, turning her attention to my wife, "you're suspended pending a full investigation. Your access codes are also deactivated, and you're banned from company premises." Mara looked around the room desperately, her eyes finally landing on me. "Eli, please. You have to believe me. I never meant for any of this to happen." I stood up slowly, straightening my tie. "Which part? The affair, the theft, or getting caught?" "The affair was a mistake, but the money. I was trying to secure our future, Jamie's college fund, our retirement. By stealing from the government and planning to leave me for your boss." The room was silent now, everyone watching our marriage disintegrate in real time. "I love you," she whispered, tears starting to flow. "I've always loved you." "No," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You loved the idea of me. The stable husband, the good father, the man who wouldn't ask too many questions while you built your escape plan." I walked toward the door, then turned back to face her one last time. "By the way, I filed for divorce this morning. You'll be served papers later today. I'd suggest getting a good lawyer. You're going to need one." The last thing I saw before leaving the conference room was Mara collapsing into her chair, finally understanding that her carefully constructed world had just imploded. I took the elevator down 32 floors, walked out into the cold morning air, and called my daughter's school to make sure she got home safely. Then I drove to my lawyer's office to finalize the paperwork that would end my marriage and begin my new life. The news broke on Tuesday morning. Local financial executive arrested in federal embezzlement scheme ran across the front page of the business section, complete with a photo of Drew being led away in handcuffs. Mara's picture was smaller, positioned below the fold with the caption, "Co-conspirator Mara Solin also faces federal charges." I was drinking coffee in my kitchen, reading about my wife's arrest like it was happening to strangers when Jamie came downstairs for breakfast. "Dad, why are there reporters outside?" I looked out the window and saw 3 news vans parked across the street, their satellite dishes extended like mechanical flowers reaching for the sky. "Because your mother made some very bad choices," I said, pulling out a box of cereal. "We need to talk." The conversation was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. How do you explain to a 12-year-old that her mother is a criminal, that the woman who helped with homework and attended soccer games had been living a double life for months? Jamie listened with the same analytical focus she brought to math problems, asking questions that cut straight to the heart of things. "Is Mom going to prison?" "Probably." "Are you getting divorced?" "Yes." "Can I stay with you?" "Always." She nodded, processing the information with remarkable composure. Then she asked the question that nearly broke my heart. "Did she ever really love us?" I sat down next to her, choosing my words carefully. "I think she loved us as much as she was capable of loving anyone, but sometimes people make choices that hurt the people they claim to love. Like choosing money over family? Something like that." The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a reporter with perfectly styled hair and a microphone, flanked by a cameraman. "Back door," I told Jamie. "I'll drive you to school the long way." We spent the next week dodging media attention while the legal machinery ground into motion. Drew hired an expensive defense team and tried to claim he was the victim of Mara's manipulation. Mara's public defender pushed for a plea deal, arguing she was coerced by her boss and lover. Neither strategy worked. The evidence was too comprehensive, the paper trail too clear. Federal prosecutors had recordings, financial documents, hotel receipts, and testimony from 3 other women who came forward with stories of Drew's previous schemes. Vera kept me updated through brief professional phone calls. The company was cooperating fully with investigators, she reported. The stolen money was being recovered. Drew's assets were frozen pending restitution. "What about Mara?" I asked during one of these calls. "She's trying to negotiate. Wants immunity in exchange for testifying against Drew." "Will they give it to her?" "Not after what I showed them." "What did you show them?" There was a pause. "The recording from her office. She wasn't coerced, Eli. She was the mastermind." That night, I sat in my empty house. Jamie was at her friend's again, trying to maintain some normalcy, and thought about the woman I'd married, the mother of my child, the person I'd trusted with my heart, my home, my future. She'd been planning to destroy all of it for months, maybe years. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can we meet? I need to explain." Emmy. She was out on bail, staying with her sister across town while awaiting trial. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "No. Please, I know you hate me, but I need you to understand. I understand perfectly. You don't. There's more to this story. More theft, more lies, more affairs, more reasons. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at noon. Give me 1 hour to explain everything." I almost deleted the conversation without responding, almost blocked her number and moved on with my life. But curiosity won. The same analytical mind that had unraveled her scheme wanted to hear her justification, her reasoning, her final attempt at manipulation. 1 hour, I typed. Then we're done forever. "Thank you." I spent Tuesday night wondering if I was making a mistake, if seeing her again would somehow weaken my resolve or cloud my judgment. But when I woke up Wednesday morning, I felt nothing but cold curiosity. I wanted to hear what the woman who destroyed our family thought could possibly justify her choices. Then I wanted to watch her realize that nothing she said would ever matter again. Riverside Park was nearly empty on Wednesday at noon, just a few joggers and dog walkers enjoying the unseasonably warm October day. I found Mara sitting on our old bench, the one where I'd proposed 14 years ago, where we'd brought baby Jamie to feed the ducks, where we'd planned our future together. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Gone was the confident professional who'd commanded boardrooms and managed million-dollar accounts. In her place sat a woman in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup and marked by stress lines I'd never noticed before. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down, careful to maintain distance between us. "You have 1 hour." She nodded, staring out at the river. "I know you think I'm a monster. I think you're a thief and a liar who destroyed our family for money and another man. Whether that makes you a monster is semantics. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen?" She turned to face me, and I saw tears in her eyes. Real ones, not the calculated display from the boardroom. "I was going to tell you everything. After we'd made enough money to secure Jamie's future, to pay off the house, to give you the retirement you deserved. I was going to confess and make it right. By stealing from the federal government? By taking money that was just sitting there, earning nothing, and making it work for us. We weren't keeping it. We were borrowing it, investing it, returning the principal with interest. The government was actually making money from our trades." I stared at her. "Do you hear yourself? You're describing fraud like it was a public service." "It started small. Just a few thousand here and there, moved overnight, returned the next morning with modest gains. Drew showed me how the system worked, how money could make money if you knew what you were doing." "And the affair?" Her face flushed. "That was complicated." "Complicated how? You either slept with him or you didn't." "I did." The words came out barely above a whisper. "But not because I loved him. Because he threatened to expose the financial irregularities if I didn't." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "He blackmailed you." "At first. Then it became easier to go along with it than to fight. And the money kept growing, and I kept thinking about Jamie's college fund, about your retirement, about all the things we couldn't afford on our salaries." "So you convinced yourself you were doing it for us?" "I was doing it for us." The words exploded out of her, loud enough to startle a nearby jogger. "Do you know what it's like to watch other families take vacations we can't afford? To see Jamie's friends getting things we have to budget for months to buy? To know that you're brilliant and hardworking, but you'll never get ahead because you chose government service over private sector money? So you chose crime instead." "I chose opportunity." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "And yes, it was wrong. And yes, I should have told you. But I was trying to build something better for our family." I stood up, suddenly unable to sit still. "What about the divorce plans? What about leaving me for Drew?" "There were no divorce plans." I heard him say, "Drew said a lot of things. He liked to think he had more influence over me than he did. Yes, I talked about leaving you when I was angry, when the guilt was eating me alive and I needed someone to blame. But I never meant it. The hotel receipts, the recordings, the evidence of you two planning your future together. We planned the financial scheme together. The hotel meetings were about money, not romance. Drew recorded everything because he was paranoid about getting caught. He wanted evidence that I was an equal partner in case he needed to bargain with prosecutors." I walked to the edge of the river, watching the water flow past. Everything she was saying sounded reasonable, logical, almost believable, which meant it was probably another lie. "Even if I believed you," I said without turning around, "it doesn't matter. You stole millions of dollars. You had an affair. You lied to me for months while I watched you destroy our marriage from the inside." "I know. You let me think I was going crazy. You let me doubt myself, my instincts, my sanity. I know. You were willing to let Drew throw you under the bus to save himself. I know." I turned back to face her. "So what exactly do you want from me?" "Forgiveness." The word hung in the air between us like a challenge. "I want you to forgive me," she continued. "Not because I deserve it, but because carrying this hate will poison the rest of your life. I want you to let Jamie have a relationship with me, even if I go to prison. I want you to remember that I loved you, even when I was betraying you. You want absolution. I want peace, for all of us." I looked at this woman who had shared my bed, raised my child, and systematically destroyed everything we'd built together. I thought about the nights I'd lain awake wondering what I'd done wrong, the mornings I'd watched her lie to my face, the moment I'd realized our entire marriage had become a performance. "No," I said. "Eli, no forgiveness, no peace, no relationship with Jamie until she's old enough to make that choice herself." I started walking toward the parking lot. "You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. Please don't do this." I stopped and turned back one last time. "I'm not doing anything. You did this. You chose Drew over me, money over family, lies over truth. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of not being completely alone with your guilt. But that's not my problem anymore." I walked away from her, from our bench, from the last remnants of our marriage. Behind me, I could hear her crying. Deep, wrenching sobs that might have moved me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like the natural consequence of choices freely made. I drove home to my empty house, picked up my daughter from school, and began the process of building a life that didn't include the woman who had tried to destroy everything I cared about. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Mara pled guilty to federal fraud charges and received 5 years in minimum security prison. Drew got 15 years after his expensive lawyers failed to convince anyone he was the victim. I kept the house, the car, and full custody of Jamie. Mara kept her debts and her regrets. It was exactly the outcome she'd earned, and for the first time in months, that felt like enough.